Ever wonder what the world looked like almost 300 years ago? And I don't mean the planet itself, but our understanding of it? Well, today, we're going to do just that. We're taking a voyage back in time using a real honest-to-goodness atlas from 1744 to see the world through the eyes of an 18th century explorer. So, let's dive right in.
Okay, let's just jump right in with one of the wildest geographical myths in history. Look at this map of North America. You see that massive island just hanging out off the coast of Mexico? Yeah, that's California. I'm not kidding. For more than 100 years, map makers in Europe were absolutely convinced California was an island. And trust me, that's just the first of many surprises we're about to dig up.
So our guide for this whole trip is this incredible book. It's called Geography Anatomized, and this is the 18th edition, printed way back in 1744. And you gotta love the subtitle. It promises a new and correct map of the world. Now, after what we just saw with California, well, let's just say correct was a flexible concept back then.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get the big picture of the entire world in 1744. Then, we're going to zoom in on the Americas and then hop over to a Europe that might look a little strange to you. From there, we'll journey to the real unknowns of the map. And finally, we'll wrap up by talking about what these old maps are really trying to tell us.
Okay, first things first, let's take a look at the big picture. What you're seeing here is basically the entire world as a well-educated person would have known it in the mid-1700s. It's this amazing mix, right? On one hand, there's all this incredible new discovery, but on the other, there are these huge, kind of scary blank spaces on the map. And you'll notice right away how they showed the world. We're so used to our flat, rectangular maps, right? But back then, it was really common to use these two circles, one for the Eastern Hemisphere and one for the Western. It's actually a really beautiful way to show the globe, but when you start looking closer, you start to see what's missing and what's just, well, totally wrong.
So take a look down at the bottom of the world. See anything missing? Yeah, there is no Antarctica. Like at all. It's just this empty space with the words Antarctic Circle. The idea of a great southern continent, it was pure guesswork at this point. A true terra incognita, an unknown land.
Now, check this out. This is Australia, except it's not called Australia, it's New Holland. And look at the coastline. The eastern side just stops. It's not there. Why? Because Captain Cook was still 25 years away from even charting that part of the world. This map literally freezes a moment in time when a whole side of a continent was a total blank.
And it's pretty much the same story over in the Pacific Northwest of America. Look at the coast from what we'd call Northern California, all the way up to Alaska. It's just this wavy, squiggly line of pure guesswork. The map makers knew something was there, but they had no real information to go on, so they were basically just making it up as they went.
All right, let's shift our focus now to the Americas. You have to remember, in 1744, this was still very much the New World, and how it was drawn on a map had less to do with actual mountains and rivers, and a lot more to do with who was claiming what land and some wild stories that just wouldn't die.
And here we are again, back to the amazing island of California. So where did this crazy idea even come from? Believe it or not, a 17th century novel. And once it got on one map, it just got copied to the next and the next for decades. And this wasn't just some harmless mistake either. It had real-world consequences. It sent actual sailors on doomed voyages looking for a mythical passage called the Strait of Anian that was supposed to separate California from the mainland. It's a perfect case of a good story being more powerful than the actual truth.
This map also gives us an amazing snapshot of the political situation. Just look at the size of Canada and France. It's huge. It takes up most of the continent. And then you've got Florida, which was a Spanish claim, stretching way up the coast. And west of the Mississippi River, it's just nothing. A big empty space. The shapes of the US, Canada, and Mexico that we know today, totally unrecognizable.
Okay, let's head south. The coastline of South America is actually pretty decent. They had that figured out. But the inside? The interior of the continent is pure fantasy. Look at this. A massive chunk is just labeled the Amazons. Yep, named after the mythical warrior women that the first explorers swore they saw there. It's literally a legend drawn right onto the map.
All right, let's hop across the Atlantic and take a look at Europe. Now, the shape of the continent, the coastlines, that's all going to look pretty familiar. But the political map? Oh, that is a whole different ballgame. A lot of the countries we take for granted just didn't exist yet, not even close.
Okay, let's focus in on Central Europe. The map labels this whole area Germany, but don't let that fool you. It wasn't one country. It was a crazy, chaotic mass of hundreds of little states, kingdoms, and cities, all sort of tangled up in this thing called the Holy Roman Empire. The unified Germany we think of today, that was still more than a century in the future. Now look to the east. Look at how massive Poland is. It's actually the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and it was a real powerhouse, one of the biggest countries in Europe. But what's really wild is that just 50 years after this map was printed, this huge nation would be completely carved up by its neighbors and would literally vanish from the map for over 100 years. It's a powerful reminder of how fast things can change.
And we see a similar thing down here on the Italian peninsula. It's labeled Italy, sure, but Italy was just a name for the place, not a unified country. Instead, you had the Kingdom of Naples down south, the Papal States controlling the middle, and a whole bunch of independent republics and duchies in the north, like Venice and Florence.
And finally, let's look at southeastern Europe. You just can't miss the huge footprint of the Ottoman Empire. It's labeled here as Turkey in Europe, and wow, it extends deep into the Balkans. It's controlling all of modern-day Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, and a big chunk of the former Yugoslavia. Its influence was enormous. Okay, for the last part of our tour, we're heading to the edges of the known world, at least the world known to Europeans. When we look at Asia and Africa, the maps get a lot fuzzier. It's less about drawing exact borders and more about, well, making really broad and often wrong generalizations.
Just look at this giant space right in the middle of Asia. It's labeled Independent Tartary. So, what on earth is that? Basically, it was a catch-all name for this enormous region full of different nomadic groups that Europeans knew next to nothing about. It was like a ghost of the old Mongol Empire, this mysterious land beyond Persia, India, and China. You know what it is? It's basically the mapmaker just shrugging their shoulders.
And Africa's map tells a very similar story. The coasts, they're mapped out pretty well, thanks to centuries of trade. But the interior? It's just a huge blank space. And there's a reason for that. It was incredibly difficult for Europeans to explore, with massive barriers like the Sahara Desert, not to mention diseases that were just devastating. So what did the mapmakers do? They filled in that huge empty space with these vague, sweeping labels like Negroland. It just goes to show you, for Europeans in 1744, the heart of Africa was a total mystery.
So, after all that, after our whole journey through this old atlas, what's the point? Why should we even care about these old, wrong maps? Well, because they are so much more than just a way to get from point A to point B.
I think this really sums it all up perfectly. A map isn't just a picture of the Earth. It's a picture of how a culture sees the Earth. It tells you what they knew for sure, what they thought they owned, and even what they dreamed about, or were afraid of, hiding in those big empty spaces.
When you look at it this way, this whole atlas from 1744 is really telling us a story. It's a story about a time of incredible new science and exploration, but an age that was also still full of myths and legends. It's a story about empires and ambition, as you see European powers literally drawing their claims onto the map. And maybe most of all, it's a story about human curiosity, that constant desire to just see what's over the next hill.
And, that leaves us with one final thought. It's easy for us to look at this old map and chuckle at the mistakes, right? California as an island, no Antarctica. But it makes you wonder, what are the blind spots in our maps today? What biases are baked into our own satellite images and GPS systems that we can't even see? What will people in the year 2270 think is totally obvious and totally wrong about the way we see the world? Definitely something to think about.